Welcome to SaanichReport. My name is Ed Johnson, and we're here today with Ray Headrick in Sydney to find out what has been going on in Sydney as of late. The date now is August 2012, and Ray has been involved in a sort of battle with City Council over the zoning of his property and that of his 100 other neighbors. So it's an interesting story, and I think it serves to enlighten our citizens as to how municipality works and perhaps how it should work. Ray Headrick, who shot to fame recently in Sydney because I think he fought City Hall and won, and I want him to tell his own story of how he became involved in city politics when previously he had nothing to do with City Hall, and one day he woke up and found out his property was essentially could be demolished around him, and he had nothing to say about it. So I'm simplifying it quite a bit, and Ray has quite a bit to say, so I'll let him tell us how he became involved with politics in Sydney. And we're filming this in August of 2012, and there's more perhaps to come down the road from City Hall in passing different bylaws, but we think we have pretty much the story as it's going to unfold now. So without further ado, Ray, tell me how you got involved with this, with Sydney City Council.
Well, it was not my intention to get involved with Sydney Council. My neighbor handed me a package of information over the fence and insisted I go to Town Hall, that they were doing something with the zoning that he didn't understand, and he being an architect and his neighbor being a developer, I thought they would know what was going on, and that is what we kind of assumed as public notices were given. We were told that a bylaw was being considered, mainly a housekeeping item, to just bring the bylaws in conformity with the vision of the community. Turns out, apparently the vision of the community was for 100 or 180, particularly 100 of us, to be branded as non-permitted use in our own homes. I have been a permitted use to reside in my home for the last 58 years, of which 30 of it I've owned it. As of a month ago, I was branded as a non-permitted use. So that's what I discovered when I went to Town Hall.
That means as a non-permitted use as a single-family residence. You were no longer permitted to live that way.
I was permitted to live that way, and I was permitted to sell it to someone else who was permitted to live in it that way, and it affects other homes more so than mine. And that was what was presented to us at Town Hall by rote. The fact is, the damage was done in what they didn't tell you. They did not tell you that if you had a two-bedroom bungalow on a conventional lot, that you could not add a third bedroom. You could no longer add a second floor like your neighbor, or the money you'd been saving to put a rec room out the back was no longer a permitted use, and therefore would be verboten. If you protested at Town Hall, you were told you could go to the variance board, which hasn't met in 15 years and didn't exist until this bylaw. And the mandate for the variance board is not to go against the spirit or the intent of a bylaw. So they misinformed us again at Town Hall. First they told us that it wouldn't affect us. Then they told us we could go to the variance board if we insisted. And the costs were in the neighborhood of $2,000 non-refundable, and the mandate of the board they just appointed is not to go against the bylaw. So they sent us down a dead-end street.
You told me before, and I wanted to get this on tape, that your neighbor showed you this information, and you went down there, and they said, "Don't worry about a thing," and you went back, and you heard that again and again.
I had been told numerous times over the years, and as I stood at the counter, people were coming in and asking, and they were being told exactly the same thing. Don't worry. Also, when I inquired, I was told by one of the officials that he had gone to an open house on behalf of the town, and a lady had come to the mat and said, "This is my house, and what's going on?" He says, "It's going to become non-conforming." She said, "Well, I don't like the sound of that." And he said, "Don't worry, it won't affect you. You'll be able to live there as you have, and you will be able to sell your property. The new buyer will be able to live in it just like that. And then he stopped. And I spun around to the official and I said, that is what is wrong with what you're doing. It's what you're not saying. It's not a full disclosure. It's a limited disclosure to suit the purpose of where you're going with this. And I'm not sure he totally understood what he was doing. But the damage is done in the fact that you cannot demolish that house and put a new home with a suite in it for coffee shop workers that the town suggests we should make. You cannot add to that house. You cannot put a garage on the property. You cannot advance the single family use any longer because it is no longer a permitted purpose in that zone. And the sinister part was that the town specifically engineered it and put in regulations that if you wanted to redevelop, you automatically found that none of these 100 properties were large enough in their own to do a redevelopment. They were forced to amalgamate with their neighbor. And if you're not on that type of terms with your neighbor, you are only sellable generally to a developer who will fill your house with renters and force your neighbor to sell. So we were delivered up to the developers on a plate with icing sugar. And that is the thrust and trend of what's going on in Sidney, and I believe in some other municipalities as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, why would they have picked your property, or in this particular area? Is this higher value for developers, or what?
Our property, it's another. I can't use the word plot. A recent sale in this area was thwarted by the town hall, and this is second-hand information, and that I shouldn't quote, but the person who received it is a very credible person and was told that the zoning here is designed to put multiple units and to forward the walking path in front of these properties. We have never been approached as homeowners in 30 years with a request to do anything of this nature in front of our properties. We bought them because they were waterfront. We bought them when nobody else wanted them. We paid the prices that nobody else wanted to pay. And now the town is zoning us and squeezing us so that they can get their way with the walkway in front of our properties. That is second-hand information, but it is also reproduced in the maps of the town. It's reproduced in literature that comes from the town that they want to extend the walkway completely around the oceanfront. And that includes these 3 properties, which is probably why they started with 3 of us here at the entrance to the town and finished this zoning 3.5 kilometers to the north, hit and miss, hopscotch through the town, picking off older houses that just don't suit their vision of a town planner's dream.
So what did you have to do when you found out that you were being sideswiped essentially on your property? What recourse did you have?
We had the recourse of going to a public hearing, which is presented by council as part of a process that any bylaw goes through that's significant. It's going to be open to the public, it's going to be free, it's going to be informative, and the public is going to be invited to participate in a so-called public hearing, which sounds excellent, and I believe the concept is quite good also. However, in fact, the public hearing boils down to a 20-minute presentation prior to a council meeting, at which time council people look at you and tell you, number one, you're too late. You're at the public hearing, which is presented as a fundamental part of the process and gives us a confidence that we're going to be heard. And then we're told by council members from the council table that we're too late with our requests. And furthermore, they suggest that because only 3 people caught the actual intent of this bylaw, that the other 99.99% of the homeowners in Sidney must, by virtue of their absence here tonight, be in favor of the zoning adoption, which is completely ridiculous. A 6th grader who keeps getting 99% on her calculator knows enough to change the batteries. When you have 5,500 properties affected by a zoning bylaw, and it affects them all from one end to the other, and only 3 people catch on and make a presentation, and you calculate that to be 99% effective, I think you have to change the batteries in your calculator. You have to shake your head. If you have 2 people on a street with an opinion, they will be different. If you have 3 people on a street, if you have 5,500 residents with a man and wife in each property, you are going to have 11,000 opinions. Our council believes that 99.99% of those 11,000 opinions believe that this bylaw should have been adopted. There is a theory that you can sit at a table and appear dumb and stupid and uninformed, or you can open your mouth and demonstrate that fact. And that is what shocks me. They have no reservation to make these pronouncements, and that may come because no one ever attends a meeting, and they're generally talking to an empty room. And the minutes are sanitized before they're put into the public record, so they have no fear or responsibility for what they say. The minutes of the meetings are under the charge of the Chief Administrative Officer to be accurate and to be maintained. They are accurate like everything else this town hall does, in as much as they say, but they are inaccurate in the amount that they don't say. And we have to pay attention to this, take some initiative. It's not as complex and complicated as we would assume. You might be able to give them the benefit of the doubt that what they do and they think is right. However, the methods they use to accomplish that are deceit, misinformation, half information, sanitized records. And I can understand, because we demonstrate apathy for the process. Therefore, someone with a degree would think that he has the authority, the implied authority, and the Municipal Act gives him some reason to believe that. But the error comes where they presume to make decisions because we are incapable of making decisions. We're not incapable of making decisions about our town. We just assume that they're straightforward decisions and should be made in a common sense, serving the people point of view, not a convoluted town planner's view, pushed and massaged and processed and encouraged by the developers. And we have nothing against developers. They've just been given a key to the hen house here, and the hens are without defense, and we need a rooster.
So
Take this afar off.
we'll get into philosophy here in a moment. So anyway, getting back to your particular problem.
We can't have chickens in Sidney.
So you had this public hearing, I take it, and you were told thanks but no thanks.
We weren't even told thanks.
Oh, okay. So where did you take it from there? I know I have some video of you standing out in front of the municipal hall and inside the chambers. So what did that? How did you get them to change their mind, or did you, in your opinion?
It wasn't. We did enough to change a rational person's mind. We petitioned them with 98% of the RM5 zoning people. When we informed them of the downside, they were 98% opposed to the bylaw and considered themselves 98% uninformed about what was going on. That the advertisements in the local, quote, newspaper were inadequate, which they're supposed to by law to be general and descriptive so that the common person can understand them. What they turned out to be is basically 2 words in the center, zoning and placement, or words of that nature, in brackets, which don't even sound like the point, and they are nebulous, they are deceptive, and they are evasive, and it is not a full and complete disclosure. It is 99.9% boilerplate. You've read these ads. When you're finished with them, the common person has no concept. When they add the line that it's going to affect everyone in town, the comforting assumption is there is a retired lawyer, there is a retired realtor. Certainly there's a county judge from Ontario who is going to review this and say, alarm, alarm, alarm. the process was so convoluted that it was impossible for the lay person, the normal citizen, to have any understanding of what was going on. And the fundamental sinister point of it was hidden and was not there and was not given privilege to the staff to reveal to the public. When your rights are being taken away from you, I believe, as a professional retired realtor, that it would be my obligation to send a person, a client, to their lawyer for a legal opinion. The town takes that responsibility and says, yes, we're taking it. Well, they don't say, yes, we're taking your rights. I believe they know it because they've done it, and they tell you not to worry. And that is legal advice, in my opinion, and it's incorrect legal advice. And they don't have any problem with that at Town Hall. Even the council members are still putting forward the concept that, I should cut that, that's another topic. Some council members are putting forward the idea that you should be happy and sign up to have your house being made non-conforming because it's going to be worth more money to a developer. It's not out of the question that one person or two people may actually benefit from that bylaw. However, the other 98% have lost a great deal of leverage. The ability to sell their home to someone and get high ratio financing. The ability to actually have their buyer stay engaged after they go to Town Hall and say, oh no, that's been red circled for development. It's eventually going to be townhouses. No, you're a non-permitted use. If you can keep your buyer involved at that level, I got to find another word for corruption. Check it here.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it corruption or is it? Gee, I think we're doing the best thing for the community by developing and bringing in more people. And look at all the jobs we're going to have. And
that is the mandate that the provincial government has put for them. I forget, 9 or 11 points, and that is preserve the ALR and in effect densify the property. And that is an overriding concept and a planning concept. And it's not outrageous. However, you leave out the part of local representation, municipal council and mayor, that are supposed to intervene in that on behalf of the citizens. These are all citizens. Even the minister in council is a public citizen, a public servant and a citizen. He doesn't want our houses made illegal, but he puts forth some general guidelines, and we have local representation to work within those guidelines to provide a living environment. I'm not so sure that towns need planners. Oak Bay is the most desirable place to live in Western Canada. As I understand it, it doesn't have the town planner. I haven't checked that out personally. However, I have never driven through a town and decided not to stop or enjoy myself there because they had no town planner. However, if I continue to drive through Sidney and see monolith after monolith after monolith, with the elderly living here, with the children playing in a prescribed park over here unsupervised, and low rentals placed over in the industrial section of the town, that is the concept of a town planner. He will tell you where to park, when to park, where to go, where to have your activities, how many people can be in the building, and there is no opportunity for a gathering place on an intersection where you meet someone you like and you park your car on the street. It'll be picked up and towed away if the town planner has his way. The soul of our community and of our country is being divvied up, sold to developers, and it's to fulfill the vision of town planners in their Town Planner Book 101, page 2, where it shows a picture of Walt Disney World, happy people in golf carts. And it's not designed for living. It's a ridiculous concept which we're all working towards because we're too busy doing our own jobs, trying to feed our families, and elect and pay representatives to make common sense decisions on our behalf, not intellectual, conceptual decisions because we're retarded. They come from us, they are us, but there is a degree of apathy. We allow them to run rampant for 3 years. They are then subject to the chief administrative officer, who in our particular case is the previous head of planning and development. He has a definite conflict of interest. His degree is to turn us into a storybook concept of a town. We had a town. We had a town with a soul. We had a town with a character. We're going to have a town which is a postcard of a town. It's going to be, as Woody Allen says, it's going to be a travesty. It's going to be a mockery. It's going to be a travesty of a mockery of a travesty of a town. And I'm not pleased with that. Did I take you off your course?
No, I see that you're not pleased with it, for sure. But I wanted to get back to this, what you did to change the council's mind.
Yeah. We did very little to change the council's mind. We put out 600 flyers on a mail walk. We did a petition of about 85 homes that were directly affected. We went to the doors and explained to them the bylaws. We did a mail-in campaign to the town hall. Other individuals came up and phoned town hall and demanded the mayor's resignation. These were all grassroots issues that were developed by others and not by me. We picketed town hall. We filled the town hall for 5 meetings in a row with overflow out capacity. We were legislated and gavelled down. We were ignored. We were told not to speak. We were told they didn't want to receive our petition. We have a right to have a petition presented to the chief executive officer of the town, chief administrative officer. He refused to accept it, told me he would not give it to council when I was directed by a councilman to give it. And we had virtually no effect until some neighbors got together and we contacted a local lawyer, and the local lawyer sent them a writ, which is sanitized out of the record. The reason they changed the bylaw is because they were basically told to attach an addendum to their new bylaw concerning about 100 properties at an average value of $500,000. They had legislated them out of private use and into only public use. Therefore, they are obligated by law to compensate the owners. My multiplication brings that out to about $5 million. If the town were to attach an addendum for $5 million, they could proceed with this bylaw and a schedule for how they were going to pay that. That is what made them change their mind. Along with the fact that if they thought they could spend our money and dodge that with a Vancouver lawyer, they still had to face the 60 people and the eventual 100 or 200 people that were zoned legal non-conforming. And an issue that's unclear to even the council members is to be non-conforming has 2 different concepts to the layperson. One is the fact that it's non-conforming by virtue of the municipality changed the setbacks after the house was built. That's one thing. Most lenders, most buyers don't have a big problem with that. When it's a non-permitted use, the house cannot be altered, cannot be changed, cannot be demolished and replaced. The non-permitted use, some lenders will not grant a mortgage on a property that is in the wrong zone. If it's a single-family dwelling and the single-family dwelling is no longer allowed in the multiple density zone, they will not insure it. They will not recommend it to CMHC for high ratio financing. It would be imprudent to do that. And the implications of non-conforming by virtue of a non-permitted use are worlds apart from non-conforming by virtue of a infringement on a property line. And that has not been explained or addressed by anyone, and I think that is for what I call the general sinister purpose. They present it even to the council members as being a benign issue which has already affected some of the properties in town, but what they leave out is it's non-conforming by virtue of a different process, a different concept, and a different set of downstream consequences. Very, very, very detrimental to the citizens. and in particular the citizens that they targeted here, which were generally in the core very elderly, widows in their 80s, and young families in the north end of town who were both working outside the house and trying to raise children in this community, and they targeted those people here, hit and miss, hopscotch across the town. And that is more of what I call the sinister nature of a town planner who's now the chief administrative officer telling the council what he would like them to red stamp.
You have that little form there of the different properties that maybe you could see.
A note I'm going to distribute to the RM5 owners is this following little sketch. This is an illustration for information only. It's not intended to be an accurate description or a legal document in any way, shape, or form. The illustration is not complete, nor is it presented to be accurate, other than it is a general depiction of some selected properties related to one another by a common interest of recent days. It has two purposes. First, to demonstrate that the properties more closely resemble a developer's selected target map of older homes, and the so-called zone which all the properties share is not a zone by any stretch of the imagination.
So I'll point out the zones. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all over town, from one end of town to the other.
There are 8. Starting at the north end, this covers 4 kilometers. This is hard to describe this as a zone. There are 5 or 6 houses at point 1 at the border of North Saanich, racing all the way down to the Anacortes Ferry. 5 houses. Actually, there are 8 houses in zone 1. There are 23 houses in zone 2. There are 9 houses in zone 3. Zone 4 has another 16 to 22, and so on, with 6 houses, 22 houses, and they took exception to 1 house over here, and our 3 houses here on the waterfront. There is no resemblance in my comprehension to that being a zone. They are not attached by similarity, by closeness, by environment, by socioeconomic standards. I have no idea how they can conclude that is a zone. And it's just a targeting map for developers of vulnerable people without a voice.
So what is your advice to people who living in communities who aren't paying attention to their municipalities? What should they be doing?
The first thing they should do is understand that the town belongs to the people. You bought and paid for your portion of the town, even if it is a condominium and it's up in the air. You own a piece of this town. You also, in the broadest sense, own the mayor and council. They are hired and elected by you to represent your views and opinions. It is your town. It is your mayor and council. The town hall, which we feel very respectful for, is our town hall. We bought and paid for it and pay the abated taxes on it. We pay the staff. It is our staff, it is our mayor and council, it is our town. Over the years, the town has become an entity unto itself with its own protoplasm and its own nucleus, and it tends to dictate to us what it wants done, and the council will tend to, because of proximity and coffee meetings, rubber stamp that, and we have to pay the ticket for what is left. We're currently paying for a pile of stones down here, a monument to seagull dung. We have another entity that's called art at the other end of the town. I do not believe that that is the vision of the town. And I digress totally. What do you want us to do? What can we do? Understand that the town is ours, and that it's our job to at least pay minimal attention, hire and elect reputable, common sense, ordinary people who live in the town. Perhaps not people who live on acreages and mansions outside our municipality, who have a vested interest to congest this to the max and leave their agricultural area completely free, with deer roaming through and the occasional car passing on their street. Densify Sidney to the max and perhaps get your name on a park or a picture in town hall that you were a council member there, and add to your scrapbook of your portfolio that you were on 13 committees, separating wet garbage from restaurants. You name it, they do it. But the town has one or two basic functions. Clean the streets, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to engineering, who takes care of that in Sidney almost perfectly. It is zoning and land use. Our council and mayor have no course or education, as far as I can discover, on zoning and land use. And they are in charge of the zoning and land use department of our town. And that's incorrect. How do we get there? First, understand that it's our town, we have a right, and they must be made to listen. Whether it's a lawsuit at a cost of $13,000 to the taxpayers to get their rights back, or whether it's a protest with picket signs in town hall, the people have to get involved. But first they have to be informed that there is an issue. It can't be done over the next 2 years as each individual walks up to town hall and discovers their purchaser left after meeting with town hall because you find out you're legal non-conforming, or you found out that you cannot put your second story on because you're legal non-conforming by non-permitted use. It's a divide and conquer over the next 3 to 5 years, and then a new council will be in, and they will be under the influence of the chief administrative officer and no longer under the influence of the citizens who elected them. So it's up to us to actually call our councillor and insist that they pay attention to us, that they come to our house, that they listen to what we have to say, bring in a neighbor with the same opinion, and make sure that they get some input from us. Because as it is, we usually spend winters in Phoenix and assume that we have common sense people looking after the town, but they are under the influence of the planning department, and the town is turning into, as I said, a postcard of a town and not a town with a soul. It has a public meeting place with hours and permits that are granted, and it does not have a at random meeting place where people can actually live and exist. We are the little stick characters that are in a planner's book. They're in front of the planner's concept of a town. We are becoming pictures of people in pictures of a town on a very picturesque place that we're screwing up with things that we call art. There is a pile of rocks already here. We could have brought those up from the breakwater and piled one on top of the other. No disrespect to the artist. Someday I may learn to understand what a rock with a hole in it means. It means, I was told, about $12,000. There would be an oversight of citizens to watch these people, a rotating oversight by random and by picking a number out of a hat, and you have a job for a month to see if the things that they are passing make common sense.
Sort of like jury duty.
Just like jury duty. I may not want to follow through on that.
Was there a pile of rocks down here somewhere that you keep referring to? That's an artist?
Do you want to see it? We can go out there.
Yeah, okay.
My neighbor refers to it as a monument to seagull ship. And I must admit it reflects more of that than it does the keeper.
It's like the one downtown in Victoria in front of the Memorial Stadium there.
I think I've seen something there, but
The tin can thing or whatever. Nobody can understand what it means.
well, then
So
it
that
must
means,
be art.
yeah, it must be art.
Must be art.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time and interest in municipal politics.
my interest was secondhand. It was at the behest of a neighbor, and each time I lifted up the carpet, I saw things that impressed me negatively, and every time I lift up the carpet, more things run. And I don't suggest that this is corruption as the mafia would be described as corruption, or that there's money involved, but there is a corruption of the basic concept of the community belonging to the people and the employees of the people fulfilling the wishes of the people. The people are being enforced or subscripted to following the vision of the planners, and that is backwards, and that is why we're getting a postcard of a town, and we're becoming the little stick fixtures, not talking to one another. The biggest difficulty with dealing with this issue is that there is no effective one method in 2012 to convey a message to all the population of the town at once. The so-called newspaper covers a fraction of the town. We're individually connected all across the world through the internet, but we're not connected to the neighbor 2 doors away because we don't know his internet address. If it were not for YouTube, we would have no connection at all. We would have been better served in this town over this bylaw had we had an active town crier. If a town crier had gone to our corner on a Saturday morning and said, "Oh yay, oh yay, oh yay, your rights are being removed, come to City Hall," the town hall would have been overrun and perhaps burned down. We need a town crier on the streets of Sidney telling us what is being planned and perpetrated upon us at the town hall level. And I do not exaggerate. We would have been better served by a town crier than anything the chief administrative officer has put forward. I know he technically is very astute and works precisely under the law. However, we have, or should have, local representation to mitigate the law, to work within the confines of the law, to create a result that's desirous of the people, not conform the people to fit within the confines of the law. That is not the purpose of the law. And that is not the purpose of a town planner. He is to serve the people, not have the people serve him, under penalty of invasion of your house, under penalty of fines up to $10,000, under penalty of trespassing on your property with 24 hours notice. Getting off. The authority that they have is more than the RCMP. Don't get me off on this. My blood pressure is...
I was going to say, get out and vote, folks, at the next election. But how do you get? That's always been the problem. You've got 35% participation, voter participation here. I mean, how do you get people enthusiastic? How do you get them out to vote?
It's very difficult because we don't have one medium that will reach them all with your message. You have to pay for it out of your pocket. Therefore, I presume, and this is only a presumption, that if you go to a developer or if you go to a large business owner, you can get contributions. Then you can afford to mail out in this country. Or you can do flyers. You need sponsorship, and like the United States, this is perhaps the best government that money can buy in this town. And it is not necessarily open to a common sense approach. We need a slate of candidates that have a 5 or 10 point thrust, and then the difficulty is getting that to the electorate. Our town is unique in that a large percentage of it is imported condo people from other provinces who spend their winters presumably in the United States. And that is a sweeping generalization and may be proved wrong with a forensic investigation. However, that's my perception. I see the motorhomes and trailers exiting here on the ferry. And so I know that we have a difficulty. We have a very unique town. Condo people on one side, the remaining homeowners on the other side. On top of that, the two remaining large swaths of the town, the northwest quadrant and the southwest quadrant, which people move into because they're beautiful single-family residence areas, have all been, with one stroke of the pen in 2015, made duplexable. Where you previously had an option to comment on what your neighbor was doing in his backyard, that is gone, evaporated. If the land fits, he builds a duplex and fills it with full of whoever, and you have no say. You select a house on a cul-de-sac with 3 cars and 3 nice homes. You can have a duplex developed here, a duplex developed there. There are now 8 cars on the property. I'm not even certain that they can't put a basement suite in it, and you have no say. You have no public hearing, you have no notice, you have nothing. Your hitherto beautiful residential area with one stroke of the pen and gavel, 4 strokes of the gavel. They do 2 meetings at a time. Strokes of the gavel, you are now in a medium density duplex zone, even though you bought a single family residence zone. What do you do about that? Move to Coombs. I've heard that from many people in Sydney. They're disgusted with Sydney. They're disgusted with the mayor and council. They're disgusted with the way the town is going, and they move in and move out, and I guess it's just going to be a condo town unless we do something about it. It's hard to focus on one issue that's going on here because they've got their fingers in everything. And like I say, you open up, you pull up one thing, and you're overwhelmed with what's going on here. The most absurd thing on the planet is they cost us $13,000 and 8 weeks of frustration and sleepless nights to rezone and double talk us and suggest they're going to get to it in September. They've already told the developer, don't worry, wink wink, nod nod. Industrial area, no problem, we'll rezone it high density. They're getting ready to put 300 to 400 children in the industrial section of town, on the busiest intersection in this town, with cement trucks and lumber trucks and commercial vehicles, and the children will be able to ride their bicycles past the commercial card lock where they fill the transports, where Van Cam has a warehouse. They'll be able to dumpster dive behind C-Star Chemicals on their way home. And you know what kids do. They don't play in the prescribed park. They don't play according to a town planner's concept. They are not little stick children on little stick bicycles that stay where they're supposed to stay. That's why we put them in residential areas, and we don't put them in the middle of the industrial zone. Okay, so we have town planning running amok like a tornado in one section of the town. We have a council that has no concept of what they're talking about. They're suggesting housing for workers, but they don't have a brochure. They don't have something they can point to. They have never made one in the last 20 years. They don't have a website that they can attach to, but they're in the process of putting low rentals on the other side. That's social engineering, and that hasn't worked in Detroit. That hasn't worked in downtown Toronto. That doesn't work in Vancouver. That doesn't work anywhere. You cannot take a zone, a property, stick it in the industrial zone, and put children, or expect children and families to move into there, and make them low wage. This is what it's designed for, according to the Sydney Council, is for minimum wage workers to live in the industrial section so that they can work for certain companies here at a minimum wage. That is a 5% change in our density. They are adding in 450 properties for low rentals in our town. If that is the vision of the official community plan, reflecting the vision of the population of this town, I can't find it anywhere. I can't find it in the coffee shop. I can't find it amongst my friends. I can't find it in my head or my heart that doing this is for the benefit or is the vision of the community. This is absurd. And they repeat it and repeat it, repeat it. bringing out the concept that if the lie is big enough and you repeat it often enough, it tends to become accepted as the truth.
I was at that meeting where Mr. Slade brought forward that proposal through his architect for his 500-unit proposal on his lumberyard land. And I was struck by the fact that the architect said that this is not a formal proposal. We just wanted to know whether we should go go forward with this any further. So we would look sort of like a wink and a nod to see if we should do this. And without exception, that's what they got from the council.
They got, I believe, 3 winks and 3 nods, and one council person said, if you're asking me for a wink and a nod, I believe he said, I'll give you 2 winks and 2 nods. The zoning that is industrial, forget that. We'll make it high-density residential, and we'll even petition the people on the other side of the street, and we have our ways of petitioning people, so don't even worry about it. Just go right ahead and do it. What we want to do in the back rooms of City Hall, we do. And we will even make the people think they're being petitioned about it. And that's what they've done, and that's how they got 2015 passed. The people thought they were being petitioned about it. It was misleading and deceptive and uninformative, absolutely contrary to the law. Then when we want to reverse it, all we hear is the law, the law, the law. They mail it to our houses telling them they have the authority. Yes, they have the authority to make some properties non-conforming. They're generally an unfortunate consequence of the greater good. But to individually, specifically target properties and make them non-conforming so they can force them to amalgamate with their neighbors so that they can fulfill the vision of town planning is immoral. It is probably illegal. It is un-Canadian, and we can keep saying this is not a communist country yet, and we can keep saying that this can't happen in Canada, but if we keep sitting on our hands, it is happening in Canada. And the only thing we're going to have left here is grain and open property in the prairies. We're going to have this so densified that no one is even going to want to live here. I'm going to have to go back on my blood pressure medication. You asked me
I think we got most of it, didn't we?
Trying to stay focused on one issue.
Oh, that was good. That was good at the end there.
You're going to have a hard time picking the part. You're going to be able to pick the parts and make me look like a lunatic. But you're going to have a hard time picking parts where I agree with the other side.
Yeah. I like the one, what did you call it? Randyville. I like that one the best. I don't think you better not say that one.
That's so last week. And we're on to... that would make everything fit. They were not going to even consider our issue until September. Okay, in September they were going to initiate a focused review to see if there was something they could do about our concerns. They read the writ from John Alexander, the lawyer, and decided, well, how about next Monday? Maybe we could review this, we could focus it, we could draft a couple of bylaws, we could amend the OCP, we could give 2 readings to that, we could give 2 readings to the official is Tuesday better? And so that is what you do, I guess. It's inappropriate that we should have to spend $13,000 and rush ourselves to death. I was not involved in that process. I know the people who were, and it is just inappropriate. The town owes the citizens either a tax refund or a check for the money they had to do to take over and do the council's job. The council should be refunding their paychecks to the 88 citizens and the 10 in particular that were involved in the petition. The town council should give back their paycheck to the lawyer who had to represent the people. That is their job. When you do not do your job and I have to hire someone else to do it for you, your paycheck gets curtailed and we give it to the person who did the job. the council and the mayor in particular, and perhaps the town planner for $130,000, the new chief administrative officer, who has had one lawsuit after another since he became the new chief administrative officer. He's way above his pay grade, and his pay grade's $130,000 a year. When we have to hire secondary people to do the job that we hired mayor and council to do, their paycheck should go to compensate John Alexander of Cox Taylor for the job that he had to do on our behalf.
This should be part of the new BC Municipal Elections Act.
Elections Act,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Every time that we have to reverse you at our cost, it comes out of your pay. This would start accountability at the grassroots level, and we'll move it right up to the federal government when they say they're going to increase our gross national product by 4% and it only works at 3%. We should reduce their paycheck by 25%. They can say anything going in, and 4 years later they're not responsible for anything going out. And we need accountability, and there's very simple ways of getting it. Maybe it has to start in Sidney.